All right, let's get into this. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Max Blessed Holloway, who this past weekend, in front of 10,000 strong at the Singapore Indoor Stadium in Singapore, defeated Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, by knockout. The official time, 23 seconds of round number 3. Omar, I have talked enough. Let me get you in here. Give me your take at how this fight played out and how it ultimately finished.
This was very sad for me, man. I texted you guys about it once it had happened. I've been calling for Zombie to retire for a long time, and I think once it finally happened, I was not prepared for the emotions that were about to take over. I will say, especially considering a lot of the fights that he's had recently, this is probably one of the better performances I've seen from him in recent memory. With that being said, Holloway, I thought, won every round up until that point. There was that third round stoppage came pretty early. I think Zombie had enough of this bullshit and was just like, fuck it. If we're going to go, we're going to go. If you're going to go, I'm going to make you go out right now. And he just rolled the dice. He was not trying to go 5 rounds. It was always fun to watch Zombie. I've been watching him since WEC. So it's been forever at this point. And it's hard not to be a fan of his. And, watching the love that man gets in his country or in his region where he's from, I thought was fantastic. Everybody chanting Zombie on his way out during, listening to the walkout song. It's another one of those iconic walkout songs that when you hear it now, that song has completely different meaning to me now at this point than I think what it was originally intended for when it was made. And it carries so much emotional value behind this man and all of his walkouts, all of his fights. And then to watch him lose, get the respect from Holloway, and Holloway we'll talk about in a minute, just showing him all the respect throughout that fight, even during the bad times, not getting super crazy and taking advantage and wanting to make sure that he didn't have to inflict any extra damage on Zombie if he didn't have to. It was emotional all the way around, you know what I mean? And then you also had Holloway coming in with the weight of Hawaii and their recent devastation on his shoulders, and it was a lot. It was a lot.
It was a lot.
As far as the fight itself was concerned, I thought Max started a little slow. If we're being honest, I thought the first round, he usually picks it up a little bit, but I think he was showing a lot of respect to Zombie, knowing the issues that Zombie can potentially bring if you give it to him, if you allow him to do it. And Max Holloway didn't seem like the type to go for a takedown, and when you leave Zombie on his feet, that's where he's most dangerous. So he was very measured in the first round. I thought he did take it pretty well, used his jab pretty well. Once we got to the second round, that's where we started getting crazy. Even in the first round, I should say, they both rocked each other back and forth. So it was a crazy first round, but second round got even more wild. Max dropped him with a 1-2, and then he just, kind of like I said, just stood over him, checked to see if he was out. He wasn't out. Immediately dove in for an anaconda choke and tried to get that sunk in. Zombie fought his way through it, and then the fight continued. And by the time we got to the third round, man, like I said, Zombie seemed like he had enough of this shit, and he was out that to kill or be killed, and he did not win that coin flip. So props to Max Holloway for showing that his hands have power and that he's definitely one to knock somebody out, because he has been getting a lot of criticism, landing 400 strikes and not knocking anybody out. But I don't really see it that way, and I think he showed everybody here that he does have power. And Zombie had a hell of a career. Unfortunately, he never got that gold wrapped around his waist, but he will always be a staple to those who love MMA. So good career on Zombie, and he will be missed.
Dude, you're right. It was a good fight up until that point. And the Korean Zombie, man, he, if anything, he has a talent of making all of his fights into his kind of fight. It's not that once it becomes his kind of fight, he has like a 100% win rate. It's gonna be a scrap. He's gonna make it a bit of a brawl, and win or lose, that's what he's gonna do. He's like an NBA team that lives by the 3 and dies by the 3. So he's like, live by the firefight, die by the firefight. Like, that's just what it's gonna be.
Yeah,
and he's either gonna get the better of it, or he's himself is gonna get caught, and consequences be damned, man.
Yeah.
But that's why he's so beloved, because he is an action fighter. He brings the heat. He brings the action. He brings the pace. And I think that's why he has brought a lot of eyeballs to the sport in and of himself, especially in his corner of the world. And he's a fighter that not just purists love, but he probably has attracted quite a bit of the casual fan to the sport as well. He has a great nickname. In fact, he pretty much goes by his nickname to the point where on the publicity materials for most of the fights that he has headlined, it's not Holloway versus Chan Sung.
Mm-hmm.
It's Holloway versus Zombie, or the Korean Zombie. So that's cool, man. He's a legend, man. He will be sorely, sorely missed. It's like, damn, the Korean Zombie is not in the sport anymore. That sucks. It does suck.
It does suck. But I'm also happy, right? Like, I don't want him taking any more damage.
Yeah.
I think to his point, he's not trying to be a number 10, a number 15, a gatekeeper, or anything like that. He was always trying to be champion, for better or worse. And I think now he's gotten to the point where I think he's realized it might not happen. The opportunities aren't going to come. He's not beating the guys he needs to in order to do that. So I think he's just I think he's accepted that. I think his time has passed.
With this loss, he finishes his pro career at 17 victories and 8 defeats. He has never lost more than 2 fights in a row, believe it or not. Yeah, I mean, he's not going out on the most terrible skid. Who's somebody who I'm thinking of? Somebody like Dawkins. Dawkins is now out of the UFC, but he lost like 4 or 5 in a row.
Did he lose him in a row?
Chris
Jesus
Dawkins?
Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he lost a lot.
That's unfortunate. So before this, he had really, Korean Zombie really had 2 really nasty losses as of late, other than the Yair knockout, which was the most insane thing.
Right, and that fight was back and forth. That fight was absolutely wild up until the final second of the entire fight. So yes,
right, exactly. But again, it was like Chan Sung Jung being like, "I'm going to make this into a Chan Sung Jung fight. I'm just going to charge at him." And I guess he didn't count on the sheer dynamism of Yair's striking. And before Yair, his last knockout was against Jose Aldo, and that was a kind of a freak thing. With what did his shoulder dislocate?
His shoulder popped out in the middle of the fight.
Because of the kick.
I can't remember if it was because of the kick itself or I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember that his shoulder ended up popping out after, and then he kept kicking the shoulder once it had popped out. Once Zombie had shown that the shoulder was out, he just kept kicking it. So I can't remember if a kick had caused it or if he just kept kicking it after it already had popped out. But yeah, that fight went to hell in a handbasket once that happened.
Yeah. So Korean Zombie, he only lost 5 fights in the UFC, and 4 out of those 5 he was finished by Jose, Yair, Volk, and now Max sees him out the door.
We also have to remember that Korean Zombie gave up some decent years in a very short career that can be MMA by going to the military for his country, which is a mandatory thing over there. So he didn't really have a choice in the matter, frankly. But I think the culture over there, they all want to, be a part of that process. I think throughout their life, I think it's a sort of patriotic pride that they have in joining the military for their 2 or 3 years of service. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But those are, 2 or 3 years is really doesn't seem that long in the grand scheme of things. But in a very short window, that can be becoming MMA champ in a sport that is not forgiving when it, Mike knows, doesn't like old people, so he gave up some critical years there, and who knows what would have happened if he never went into that military career. That's
a great point. And his gap was from 2013 to 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
So, happy trails to the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung. And now he's retired from MMA, and he's only 36 years old. I always wonder what guys do post-fight career. I'm sure he has many options. I mean, he is pretty famous. I'm sure he can kind of tour around and get paid lots of money at different training academies to do guest spots and all that kind of stuff.
Zombie better release a fucking album before it's all said and done. My man is a singing prowess.
He sings? What?
Oh,
I
he
didn't know
does
that.
sing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Korean Zombie's
What?
got pipes on him.
No.
He does.
I had to find this.
You got to Google it. Google it later.
I
Don't
will.
get stuck in the rabbit hole.
I'm looking on his Wikipedia. He's appeared on a television show called Fighter as a mentor, but he is also in a music video in 2021.
He's
Look
about
at
it, man.
this.
And I can
Look at
imagine he
this.
could probably get a gym open and all that kind of stuff. He's got a really big
Yeah.
name to him. I think he could. I think he'll be perfectly fine in that regard. And he's probably made a shit ton of money. The man's gotten a few performance bonuses out of his career too. So
Yeah, but he doesn't have the longest tenured career. He's only 17-8. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
He doesn't even have. He has 25 bouts. 25. But you're right, especially as of late, he has headlined quite a few. Let's see. Let's count this out. One, because like, other than pay-per-views, wow. Yeah, he's a headliner. Oh my God. Almost
Yeah.
every fight in his UFC career, he headlined.
He was already a big name when he came out of the WEC.
That's true. He headlined.
I don't actually think Chan Sung Jung was ever like below a top 10 rating.
So he has had to make a decent amount of money. Once
I'd imagine
from
so.
2012 on, did he headline? Yes, he did. He headlined against Poirier was a fight night headline. Well, UFC on Fuel was a fight night headline. Then UFC 163 against Jose was a headline. And then UFC Fight Night Bermudez versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Korean Zombie versus Yair. Then UFC Fight Night Moicano versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Frankie Edgar versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC on ESPN Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige. Then he headlined 273 against Volk. And now he headlined this fight night. The man is a headliner. He's had to have made a decent amount of money.
And again, if you look at all of these asterisks by them, right? They're all of them, or most of them are performance bonuses, fight of the night bonuses, right? Like he racks up money, this man, with the way he fights.
Yeah, that's true.
He will be missed. He will be missed.
Let's talk about now the winner of this bout, who did win in spectacular fashion. Max Blessed Holloway. Let's see. Max, where could he go from here? He has now won back-to-back fights once again, defeating Arnold Allen and now Korean Zombie. What do you think is next for him, bud?
I mean, I don't know what you can do with Max Holloway, honestly, at this point, man, because he's going to continue to beat everybody in that division, it seems like, until he gets another crack at Volk. Volk right now is going to be fighting Ila Topuria, I would imagine, right? I think that fight is... I don't think it's booked yet because I think Volk was still... Or is it booked? I can't remember now. Balls.
Topuria?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's booked yet. But I would imagine that that's the fight that they're looking to make at this point, is Volk versus Topuria. So it's difficult to say what Max Holloway needs to do at this point. I guess, like I said, maybe run it back with Brian Ortega. It's been a little bit at this point. Maybe he can fight Arnold Allen. No, he just fought Arnold Allen and got his ass beat. Yeah, I'm not really sure. There is the Giga Chikadze now that Giga's come off of a loss, but he's still a little, just came off of a win against Alex Caceres. But he's a little bit away at this point from Max's position, so it wouldn't, from that point of view, it wouldn't make sense. So there might be some options here and there, but it's, I think at this point he really is shooting for the title, and I think we just need to see what happens with Volk.
I mean, there being a fourth fight is not completely unprecedented. Then we just see Figueiredo versus Moreno fight a fourth time. And, dude, that quartet of fights was pretty spectacular. I will say I have found so far the trilogy between Volk and Max, while, I mean, you can't get any more high level than that. I have found it a bit frustrating. I don't know. It's like they're both so good they negate each other. They like cancel each other out. I mean, the first two fights were razor close. I think Volk won very much more convincingly on scorecards in their third bout. But I'm looking right here. The first one was a very close what was a UD for Volk, but I think people thought Max won, and then the second one was a split. So what do you do? What do you do?
I mean, if it makes sense, there's at some point you can't really deny the need for that fight if Max Holloway is destroying everybody in that division. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you have to run that fight back again. The real problem is that these Max is always continuously at the top of the division, that everybody is going to end up jumping him until we get to the point where Volk has basically run through most of that division as well, and then you kind of have to see again who the best guy in that division is.
Yeah.
But you can't keep running them back to back to back, which I think, was what was happening with Moreno and Figueiredo. They were kind of doing back to back fights. That I think you can't do at Volk and Holloway. But running a fourth one back after they've both simultaneously probably beaten 2 or 3 guys from that division, it does make a bit of sense.
Max Holloway has only lost to 3 people at 145 pounds. Alexander Volkanovski, Dustin Poirier twice, and Conor McGregor and Dennis Bermudez. What did I say, 3? That's 4, right?
Yeah, it's 4. Mm-hmm.
Conor and Bermudez were a lifetime ago. They were literally a decade ago.
That was no wrestling Max, is what that was.
That's true, too. So do you think he could go up? There was once upon a time where he was going to fight a man named Khabib.
Yeah, he can definitely go up, but I don't think going up means not cutting weight. I think Max Holloway would have to change his physique to a certain extent, and I think he'd have to put on muscle. He'd have to get bigger. And if he goes up to 155, I don't think he needs to plan on going back down to 145 ever again.
I think he could. I mean, the man is what, 5'10", 5'11", listed at?
Yeah, but the dudes that are at... What happened to him at 155?
Yeah, Poirier did kind of handle him.
And Poirier was a 145-pounder, so it's not like they were,
At
shades away from each other at one time, right? But not then, because Poirier had filled out, had gotten bigger, had changed his frame for 155.
Right.
Max Holloway is going to need to do the same thing. His size advantage is not going to work as well at 155 as it does at 145. So he just needs to put on a little bit more stock in his barrel there.
I would love to see him fight Conor again at some point, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. We mentioned that in our chat. But Conor, talk about changing your frame. Conor's trying to compete at light heavyweight. So,
I mean, if he keeps fucking taking whatever he's taking, he's going to get there quick.
Yeah, he's going to host the Ultimate Fighter against I don't know,
Brock Lesnar,
some middleweight or somebody next. He's going to do it with Sean Strickland next or somebody like that.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
All right, let's for the sake of time, let's move on to the co-main event, unless there's anything else you want to say about either Max or Zombie.
Yeah, I'm all I'm going to say, man, is Zombie's a legend. If you guys don't know, if you guys came into the game late, definitely go back and do your homework on this man. He is a legend, fantastic to watch. One of the 3 twister submission holders in the UFC's history. I will miss him dearly. I know I've had some harsh thoughts about where his career has needed to go for the last couple fights, but that's only because I hate watching him take a ton of damage. I'm such a big fan of him that watching him lose the way he had been losing at the time was super difficult to take. So I'm glad this fight was more competitive. It was definitely more entertaining to watch as far as the back and forth, and actually Chan Sung putting on a really good performance in that sense. But I'm glad it's over. I'm glad he's gonna spend the rest of the time, I think, at this point with his family and doing other things and staying healthy. So good for him.